This is Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast where we bring Jesus into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, Jason here. Welcome to Sports Spectrum. It's so cool that you're joining us here on the show today. If this is the first time you've joined us, welcome. You can check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the home base for all of our content here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum, sportspectrum.com. It's got articles, it's got a daily devotional, it's got every podcast. It's a great site to check out every single day, sportspectrum.com. And you can reach me directly if you have any comments or questions or any ideas for future guests. You can email me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. That's my email address, jason@sportspectrum.com. We are presented today by Ronald Blue Trust, one of our partners and sponsors here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum. And listen, we all have questions about our finances, especially in 2020. What's the future look like with regards to how we make financial decisions? Well, Ronald Blue Trust can be trusted. They're the place to turn to. They apply biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions, to experience clarity and confidence, and leave a lasting legacy. You can check them out over at ronblue.com. That's the website. For all your financial concerns and questions, check them out. Ronald Blue Trust, ronblue.com. Today on the show, we welcome Grant McCasland, the North Texas men's basketball coach, coaching over at UNT. Way back when, before he was a basketball coach, he was a basketball player, a point guard with Baylor from 1995 to 1999. And then he had a coaching stop at Baylor as well as an assistant under Scott Drew for many years. He's also been a head coach at Midland, Midwestern State, Arkansas State, and now in North Texas. And in his first season with North Texas in 2017-2018, he led them to the CBI Championship, College Basketball Invitational Championship. He's won 20 games in every season that he's been a head basketball coach at the Division I level. And last year, 2019-2020, he led North Texas to a 20-11 finish and a first-place 14-4 conference record in Conference USA play. Coach has a great story, he's got a great faith, and I think you'll enjoy hearing Grant McCasland joining us today on Sports Spectrum. It's a great conversation. Take a listen. Coach McCasland, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
Great, Jason. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's so good to have you on, Coach. Let's start. I was thinking about where we should go with the beginning of our conversation, and I thought maybe March 12th, 2020 would be a good place to start. That was the day after the world declared a pandemic. You were getting ready to lead your team into a matchup with Florida Atlantic and begin what you were hoping, I'm sure, would be a Conference USA tournament title, a trip to the big dance. And then everything stops. So I'm curious, maybe from your perspective, how tough that conversation was with your players, knowing that they wouldn't get that chance, and kind of how things just shaped up for you, kind of communicating that to them as a coach and trying to figure out what the heck is going on here.
It happened, as you know, really quickly, and it escalated quickly. And we decided to take a stance as a staff. I've got such a great staff. I think that's probably first and foremost, like just who we've surrounded ourselves with as a program, and the real heart behind delivering a message that's tough, that the season ended quicker than we all hoped, was just of gratitude. Just that we had the opportunity to celebrate a Conference USA championship on our home court together. How unique and what a blessing that was to actually have that experience together. And so we just decided to focus on those things that we really could all appreciate together. And I was fortunate and blessed to be on Scott Drew's staff at Baylor for 5 years, and their season ended. And just, and thinking of other people that we were talking to, how this network is, you talk to those people that you're close with and talking about like whose tournament's going to continue, what are you hearing? And, that was probably Coach Drew's best team. And I went to school at Baylor, so I was really following them and excited for them because I was hoping Coach would get to a Final Four. And they didn't get to experience a conference championship. Their season ended before the Big 12 tournament, before their real tournament run that they got to have and they were prepared for. So I think we were all overwhelmed with the sense of gratitude of our season that we did get to celebrate on our home court. And we just focused on that. And we were focused on honoring the seniors, and it's the first time we'd won a conference championship in 31 years. So it was really difficult, honestly. Because we kind of had put ourselves in position to maybe play in the NCAA tournament, but everybody was in the same boat. So honestly, my heart went out to all the programs that maybe didn't get to experience, a championship in one way or another. And we just tried to help our guys understand how blessed we were to actually be able to finish on winning a championship and celebrating it, as opposed to just the uncertainty of what could have happened.
That doesn't sound like it's easy, though. I'm not saying gratitude isn't the right way. It's a great way to lead, obviously, but that doesn't sound like that's easy. That shouldn't just come like naturally in a lot of ways because you feel like something was taken from you.
Yeah, I think the part that wasn't easy was looking at DJ Draper, which is one of our seniors, Dane Gu, and Roosevelt Smart, those three guys, and knowing that they're not going to put on another UNT uniform. And so that's why we put all the emphasis on our appreciation for those guys. And, it was neat to see our team, because it was, when we told them on the practice court that was going to happen, they all surrounded those three guys. It was neat because it wasn't about, the individual part of one person not getting it or all of us. It was just like they were focused on those three guys, knowing that was the end of their run and their career. And as a program, you work on a lot of things. You work on ball screen coverages. You work on scouting reports. You work on what plays you're going to run. But when you see their ability to come together in those kind of moments, that's when like, this is the reason why you do it, right? I mean, you'd love to have the celebration on that same court that we practiced on our last time together be what you remember. But I mean, I'll remember our team surrounding those three seniors and knowing that their career was over, and just how much those guys loved on those three guys.
What was the great lesson you learned about yourself as a coach, maybe as a man as well, going through what we've all been going through here in 2020?
Yeah. It's funny. I think this is the same for everybody in our profession in coaching. My dad grew up a Baptist minister. So I have two brothers and a sister. They're all in ministry, and the word sabbatical kind of gets used as a part of ministry. And as coaches, you don't get those times to step away. And my wife's awesome, but we haven't been on a ton of vacations as a family, and her and I together very often, just because of the pace and the flow of changing jobs or taking over a new program and the recruiting seasons. And so, the biggest thing I think I appreciated and learned, which is probably what a lot of people did, was the opportunity to slow down and realize how busy our lives are, and how, that God gives us a blessing like that, and maybe once in a lifetime, but there's a lot of hardship that goes around the country. But for us personally and our family and myself, it really taught me that slowing down is actually leaving space for God to do something greater in my life than I even anticipated, which was that my relationship with my wife would be priority number one, which I always had said it was, and I always wanted it to be. But I think that gave me the ability for her and I to wake up and drink coffee every morning and sit together for an hour before the day started. And usually it's, hey, you take this kid here. We have 4 kids. So you take this kid here, and then I got to be here. And my mind's already thinking about practice, because we practice in the mornings here. And so, I mean, it really allowed me to maybe slow down and see that maybe the pace of doing is not as important as I thought it was. And that the Lord had some greater things in store for not only myself, but for my wife and for our family when I made more space for him as a part of the day. And, I mean, like I said, there was a lot of tough things going on in other people's lives that I know were extremely difficult. And this was probably for us one of the greatest blessings to have the pause.
So is that something now going forward that you maybe can implement once we get, I mean, we're sort of still in this, right? But once you get back to what hopefully will be the regular normal in a couple years or a year or whatever long that is that something that you can now take and implement into your daily rhythms that maybe, you realized you were missing from being a coach because it's such a busy, hectic type of position?
It's funny. We talked about that. I'm in a men's group on Tuesday mornings through our church, and we talked about that this morning because it already felt like that we've sped this thing up, and we've already gone back into maybe the rut of the pace of which was the busyness that kind of becomes to overwhelm it. And where I think there's more of a peace for me specifically is that I don't have to have all the answers for everybody right away. I think that's the place that I realized even more so, that we've got a great staff and we've got the right people in our program. And if I can be clear and honest about even maybe my own shortcomings or my struggles or who I am and what I'm dealing with, that I don't have to carry the burden for everybody, that they get everything figured out immediately. I think that's where that rhythm and maybe that mindset is even become more prevalent for me through this. And maybe that's something that I can apply. I'm a doer by nature. I'm excited about what we can do as a program. I think about what other people can do. And I'm always thinking there's more I can do, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I know God's kind of built that into me as a part of what makes it great, but also that there has to be a space where this morning, for example, my wife asked me to come home and help out with one of our children who was doing online learning, right? And so I could have just said, I got to go. And instead I went home, and I think what it gave me the peace about is that if I can go and love my wife the way I'm supposed to and love my kids, and I feel like that will carry over and God will honor it with how I coach our team and how I prepare them. And that there's space for the priorities that need to be in that order. And if I can do that in that order, that he'll continue to honor what we're doing as a basketball coach and maybe as a basketball program.
Tell me about the Bible study you mentioned, or the small group, I should say. It might be a Bible study as well, that you have every Tuesday. Why is that important for you to be a part of something like that?
Yeah, man, that's probably the one area that if I could say has probably given me the greatest source of freedom in doing what we do as coaches, which you're always trying to pour into other people, is a space where we can go and be held accountable for how we are leading not only our own lives, but our families and then our program. And I think when you are always talking with your staff, or you're always trying to figure out, for me specifically, maybe even people around the university and administration, how you can do your job better. There's no greater resource than having men in your life that are going through the same thing in their own businesses with their own families, to be able to not only share your struggles with, but give you some encouragement, and maybe as simple as praying with one another, and it, just to be able to have a source that your relationship isn't dependent on how well you do your job and how they view you, and a space where you can just tell the truth and be Grant and not be Coach Mac, or not be dad, or not be husband. I think that's probably the most life-giving place. I walk away from those moments of small group, and I meet with a buddy once a week, who's who's unbelievable, and just from an accountability standpoint. And most of the time we end up just sharing our hearts about what's difficult. And I think as leaders, you don't get that space very often, and to make room for that, a place you can be honest, is really life-giving.
Today's show is sponsored and presented by Ronald Blue Trust. Their advisor is applying biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help their clients make wise financial decisions, to experience clarity and confidence, and leave a lasting legacy. They got over 35 years of experience, not only serving the community at large, but serving professional athletes and coaches as well. They've tailored and created specific services to meet those athletes' needs, but they're also here for you and I. Trusted financial advisors providing confidence and reassurance to help you along in your financial journey, and you can trust them. That's why I love the name that they have, Ronald Blue Trust. We love what they stand for, based on biblical principles, helping individuals and families across the U.S., especially those who are beyond the debt problem stage, but want to be good stewards of their wealth. You need to go check them out at their website, ronblue.com. Any questions, any concerns, anything you want to talk about, they are available right now to answer your questions. Check out Ronald Blue Trust on their website, ronblue.com. Grant McCasland is our guest here on Sports Spectrum, the North Texas men's basketball coach. I want to ask you about that faith. I love your Twitter handle. It says simply, love God, serve others. So tell us about that love God part. You kind of alluded to it, I think. Your family, your father, I think you said, was a minister or pastor. Can you talk about your faith journey and kind of where that took shape for you?
Yeah, well, I was a son of a Baptist minister, so grew up going to church. If we weren't in the church or we weren't at the house, we were at a sporting event, and fortunately we had keys to the church gym. Always had a great facility to get into it, so it felt like had two brothers and a sister, and it definitely, my life revolved around being at church and doing good. And then also it revolved around sports. And at an early age, definitely my identity was severely attached to how good I was at different sports. So good at football, good at basketball, good at baseball. And in 7th grade, I tore my ACL playing football, and went to the doctor, and he told me, like, hey, the way these injuries work at this age, you may not be able to play sports till we can have surgery, which could be your senior year. And so for me, that was a moment where God kind of floored me and took away what was an idol in my life. And then I was like, what am I? Like, if I'm not sports, then what am I? And so really God put that in my life. And that was the moment. At a young age, I'd been to enough gospel messages, what I'd heard about who Jesus was, and I wanted to follow him. And in my heart, I knew that I had sinned and fallen short. But to say I'd put my faith in him, I think that was the turning point where I decided that, okay, I get it now. Like, Jesus can't be part of what I am. He has to be who I live my life for and give my heart to completely. And so through that, memorized 1 Peter 5:6-10 with my dad. And my dad was really influential in walking me through that. Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he will lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And so that was the moment that I did. I just said, Lord, I want to serve you. I don't want this to be about the sports that I play. So that was a big moment in my life. That was the turning point where I gave my life to Christ and decided that I wasn't going to live for my own gain. And through that journey, had the opportunity to go and struggle through high school, and went to Baylor University. And that's where I finally got to realize maybe what it is to live out my faith authentically, the way God intended me to live it out, and lived probably my parents' faith through that whole journey. And then you finally get to college and you realize that, that at some point you're going to have to be accountable to yourself, and you're not going to be able just to say, hey, I'm doing good because my parents are here. And that the Lord really started developing some disciplines. And got to be a part of a few churches that were really influential in that part. And that's why when I finished playing sports in college, there was kind of a crossroads of, Lord, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to be a part of? A lot of different things, but the one thing I felt was huge was the impact of being a part of a team and what that had on my life, and that God had put me in a position to play a part of teams as a way of ministry. And ever since kind of finished playing in college at Baylor, deciding to coach, I went to Texas Tech to work a basketball camp. And my wife, who went to a rival high school, we went to prom together in the same limo, but with different people, to two different proms. And she was playing soccer at Texas Tech. She finished up school. I went there to be the ops guy. And just through all that, we ended up getting reconnected and became really close, and then ultimately ended up getting engaged and married. And I think that was probably the best part of the journey post accepting Christ in the 7th grade, was the opportunity to partner with my wife, who literally was the most godly person I knew growing up. And so our families were connected. It was really a huge blessing to start the journey. And she played college soccer, and so she gets the kind of the program part of it. Really the heart behind all of it is that God's put us in this position for a purpose that's greater than just winning games.
That's great. I love that story. How you mentioned sports as an idol, or basketball as an idol. So how do you make sure that doesn't become an idol even today? Because it's like you said, before the pandemic, you're spending so much time in the program, pouring into coaches, pouring into players, doing the best job that you can do, which is what you're called to do. But how do you make sure that basketball doesn't become an idol in your life now?
Yeah, good question. I think the biggest area that, our heart in worship has to be where the glory of what we do all this for can't be any part of what we identify ourselves with, right? That the glory goes to God for who he is in our life and the giftings he's given us and the opportunities. So the moment I'll tell you a funny story. Our first year at North Texas, we won the CBI championship. And so it was a long journey. We ended up really bringing a team together. It was so much fun. We won the CBI, and kind of the history of the CBI, some teams that had won it had advanced and played good the following years and had some success. The next year we had the best start in school's history. We were the fastest team to 20 wins, and things were really rolling. Well, one stat specifically that jumped out at the time was an after timeout efficiency stat, which meant after timeouts, we'd come out and draw something up and it would work. And at the time we were number 1 in the country in offense after timeouts. And we were playing a home game toward the end of the season, and we came out of the timeout and we scored. And I just remember in my heart, and it came out of my mouth, the words like, man, I'm getting really good at this. Okay. So just bear with me, because I don't want to, and I hate even saying it because it's embarrassing, but those words came out of my mouth kind of under my breath, saying, and not to say that God caused us to lose 7 of 8 because I said that, but we lost 7 of our last 8 games. And literally in my head, I just know that the Lord quickly has reminded me of his faithfulness, and it's not tied to the wins and losses, and it's not tied to what I think I'm good at. It's 100% his love for us. And because of his love for us, that we can give it back to him and work hard. It's not to say that it's all like, hey, it's just whatever. I mean, whatever happens, it's just God's given us a passion and a purpose to do the things that he's called us to do with all our heart. And we pour our heart into it. And we have high expectations, and we ask for our guys to do certain things. But I say that because it's just a constant reminder. The moment I make it about me, or I make it about what I've achieved, is the moment I feel like that I quickly realize that I'm failing in what God's called me to do. So hopefully those reminders are fewer and far between in the future. But I think moments like that really put in perspective what the purpose of what we're doing is, and that it can't be about the things that we think are important from a perspective of money, fame, that would say I'm great at this, instead of pointing to who he is and what he's done for us.
Last question, Coach. Thank you for your time. This has been a lot of fun getting to know you, and obviously North Texas, we'll be keeping an eye on them. Presumably we have a college basketball season. I hope we do, and I think it'll be a great year to have college basketball returning after the abrupt ending at the end or middle of March last year. This is a question I ask all of our guests here on Sports Spectrum. What's the Lord showing you and teaching you today? Because I feel like every day, maybe that's part of the men's study that you were with your guys this morning, but every day he teaches us something new, whether it's in a season of life or even just in this moment, we learn something new every day from God. What's the great lesson he's showing you right now?
I think the ability to share your struggles with people and to be honest where you are. Man, we just want to portray a level of confidence that says that we have it together. And I think the Lord's really helping me to understand that the more we can be honest with who he is in our lives, the quicker that we can help people understand that they don't have to be perfect, and to go to Christ with your hopes and fears is the only place that we find our true purpose. And the great fight is to be a strong husband and dad and coach, and just the more we can point to Christ through all of it is where he wants us.
Coach Grant McCasland, North Texas men's basketball, UNT as they go by. Listen, thank you, Coach, for being here on the show. All the best to you this season, and let's get you back on again sometime. Thanks so much for joining us.
Let's do it, Jason. Thank you.
And many thanks to Grant McCasland for joining us today on Sports Spectrum, the North Texas men's basketball coach. Keep an eye on them this year in college basketball. Hopefully we have college basketball. Grant's season is supposed to start with North Texas November 25th, and we hope that remains the same. And then we get to the 2020-21 season. And hopefully, with this pandemic, we can actually have March Madness and an NCAA men's tournament and women's tournament as well. We want to see college basketball in March. Hopefully, we get that in 2021. And many thanks to Grant McCasland for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. We also thank our partners and sponsors today, Ronald Blue Trust. You can check them out at ronblue.com for all your financial needs and concerns, ronblue.com. You can also check out our website, sportspectrum.com. That's the place to turn to every single day for content like this on the intersection of sports and faith, sportspectrum.com. And lastly, whatever app you're listening to this podcast on, do us a favor, click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, on the Apple Podcasts app, do us a favor and leave a review. It takes 10 seconds. You leave a quick review on the podcast, and it helps get the word out as we continue to tell the stories of Jesus and sports right here on Sports Spectrum. Thanks for tuning in. Again, my name is Jason Romano. You can reach me directly, jason@sportspectrum.com. And we'll see you next time right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Have a great rest of your day.